What's up, guys? It's Kit Dale here. I have a really cool podcast today because this is the one question I get asked more than anything when I'm doing seminars or teaching classes. Why are concepts better than techniques, and why do you hate drilling? Now, to start with the second question, why do I hate drilling? First, you need to understand not to get misinterpreted by what I describe or what I define as drilling. I'm not talking about an exercise or something that you would see with wrestlers and stuff like that. I'm talking about the repetition of a singular technique or a chained technique. Whenever you're doing something over and over again past the point where you can competently do it, that's what I'm against. So I'm not saying, sometimes you're going to learn a new technique that is going to be highly complex and you're going to need to practice it. I've got no problems with that. But once you can competently do it, then you need to move on and start doing it in live training, because there's a lot of variables that are going to come into play that'll define whether that technique works or not. Not just your ability to perform it against a cooperating partner. You have to understand now you know how to do it. Now you have to do it in a way that your opponent doesn't see it coming, or your opponent allows you to do it and stuff like that. So it's there's a lot of variables that are going to come into play afterwards that are going to dictate whether you get it live or not. And this is why some people are really, really good. Like GSP was really good in MMA with his takedowns, and he was never even a wrestler, but he practiced the wrestling once he started getting into MMA. But his timing was outstanding. His ability to deceive his opponents into them not thinking he's going to shoot and then shooting. Where there's other guys that I know that have got beautiful, crisp technique with wrestling, but they're so damn predictable that every time they're about to shoot, you can fucking read it. They're calling you beforehand, telling you they're about to shoot and then shooting, it's never going to work like that. So, once you can competently do it, then I think you should leave it behind. There's a few reasons. One of them is that whenever you practice something over and over again, to create muscle memory, what you're doing is you're also creating a habit. Your body is creating a habit. And I think that most people think they're doing a positive one because they're practicing the technique so well that they don't need to think and they just execute. The problem is with that is if you're not thinking, it's very easy to fall into traps or just to react without thinking and not see there's a trap up ahead. That can be one problem. Two, it makes you really predictable. Now, you might be able to go into a competition and get your techniques that you've drilled, but if you keep competing, people start figuring you out. I mean, you see this all the time in jiu-jitsu, especially by the time people get to black belt, and they may have a few really good things up their sleeve, and then they start getting found out. Most recently, if you look at Craig Jones with his inside heel hook, the first couple times I trained with him, man, he got me heaps with that. But then once you start figuring out what they do and those common themes, you can start avoiding it. And he's had great success against everyone at a high level, but now he's getting less and less submissions, and people are starting to figure that out. So he's going to have to evolve from that. And the bigger problem is a lot of people struggle to evolve from that, because once you create that muscle memory, let's say, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but let's say it takes about 10,000 repetitions to get perfect muscle memory. Well, it'll take about 40-something thousand to be able to break that and create new habits. So it's a lot harder to create new habits and break old neurological pathways than what it is to create new ones. And I think that, in my opinion, you want to avoid creating habits, because habits can be predicted. And once you're predicted, everything becomes much harder. And you can still compete or train like that, but you're going to rely a lot more on strength because people see what you're doing and you start muscling it on, and then you're going to need fitness, and it takes a toll on your body, and I think you want to avoid that if you want to. Sorry, the video just got called off. Train intelligently is what I was going to say. Now, if we could sort of simplify this and so that you can understand where I'm coming from when you take the technical route and the conceptual route. If you look at techniques and you understand it takes about 10,000 repetitions to master a technique, or 10,000 hours to master something, and you think about how many techniques there are in jiu-jitsu and how many positions there are in jiu-jitsu. And I've done a very rough calculation of this already, and then I gathered that it would take around, if you were training 2 hours a day, 2 sessions a day, to learn every single technique or master every single technique in jiu-jitsu would take about 512 years. And that was about 3 years ago I figured that out. Now, if you add all the techniques now, it's probably going to be around 600 years. New techniques are getting invented all the time, and if you want to keep on the forefront, you're going to continuously have to drill new techniques, which most people, and I'm sure the people watching right now, you don't have that much time. You can't train 3 times a day or, you know, 6 times a week. I don't even train that. I'm lucky to train 4 times a week at most. I have other things that I want to do and other things that I've got a high priority for that I need to spare my time. And I'm sure a lot of people have families and stuff like that. They just cannot set aside that much time. So if you're trying to do the technical route and you aren't training 3 times a day, every single day, you are going to struggle. You're going to struggle a lot. Now, the way I kind of look at it, I see 2 different options, okay? 2 different ways of training. You have the technical route, like that, where you learn a technique, you practice it so many times until it becomes muscle memory, and then you can implement it into your live training. And then you need to learn a new technique and a new technique and a new technique, and that continues to go that whole time. So you end up being someone that collects a lot of techniques. Or you have the opposite, like me, where I don't really want to know any techniques, or I don't want to collect any techniques. What I want to know is I want to find out the underlying principles that make certain techniques work, and how I can find a universal concept that allows me to perform all these techniques at will and completely improvised. Now, to give you a very easy understanding on one way I found, which was the first way, and it's very simple. Instead of learning all these different sweeps, which I used to try and practice, and I would get stuck in a bad position, not know how to sweep from there, so I would force myself into a position where I had one sweep and then try and force that on, which was so predictable. It cost me so much energy, and it was really an unintelligent way of trying to do jiu-jitsu. Then I started discovering something. I really broke down all the sweeps I knew, and I started trying to figure out what is the common theme here that makes every single sweep work. And I figured out there was 2 things that you had to do to make every single sweep work. And if you used those 2 things, you could sweep someone from anywhere. And not just sweep, you could turn them over and you could take them down. Those 2 things are removing your opponent's ability to post in a certain direction and generating leverage to move them in that same direction. If you do that, you will sweep them every single time. And that is basically all I do. The whole time I'm identifying posts that I can remove and leverage that I can push them in that direction. And you have to be very creative with that, and you become very creative as you keep practicing. When I first started, it took me like 30 seconds to figure out one way to sweep somebody. Now it takes me a split second to identify multiple ways to sweep someone, which then makes it much easier because now I can choose the ones that I think are going to be the most deceiving. And I can set up traps a lot better for that. Instead of going for the post first, a lot of time I get the ability to move them back and forth, then take away a post, or move them left and right, then take away a post. And I figure, once you figure out these leverage points and ways you can remove people's posts or get them to remove it themselves, then your sweeps become so much better, and it's so easy to sweep people. One of my favorite things in jiu-jitsu is to sweep people, and I feel like it's one of the easiest parts because I identified that concept, that universal concept, and I have played with it so much in my head that now that has become muscle memory. I don't even need to think about those things. That just, my body naturally does it, just like walking. So you have one way of training where you're going to accumulate as many techniques as you can and drill them over and over again, which requires so much time and so much effort. Or you can sit there and try and figure out all those concepts and get so well identified with those concepts that you can just make shit happen. You can improvise. It's using trial and error, but it's fast tracking that because you already have the rule to follow. You practice that, you get really fucking good at that. That's the thing with problem solving. The more you practice problem solving, the quicker you become at it. So that's the biggest reason why I like concepts more than techniques, because it takes 6 times less time. Does that make any sense? You progress about 6 times faster than what the other way does. I can tell you that, I can guarantee you that. I got my black belt in just about 4 years, barely training compared to fucking what the professionals were. I was training like 5 times a week instead of 3 times to 4 times a day, which most people do. Plus I was in Australia. And I'm not particularly smart or anything like that. I'm a very normal person. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. So that's basically the reasons why I go the conceptual route. Now, I'm not expecting you guys to try and figure it all out yourselves, because it took a lot of effort, a lot of time and effort for me to identify all those concepts, which most people don't have. But that's why I created the programs, the Art of Learning Jiu Jitsu, and all my other masterclasses, to give you those concepts so that you can take them and run with it. And it's going to fast track a lot of people's time. I know if I was a new student and I was to have the information that I've put out now, I think I could get a black belt in 2 years, and I'm not joking at all. Easily 2 years if I applied myself. Anyway, please let me know what you think, if I made sense with that whole video. Give me your comments if you agree or disagree. I'll get on there and comment back to all you guys. And please, if you enjoyed it, press like. It helps me a lot. And share it if possible. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you go to my website, kitdaletraining.com, for all my videos for the Art of Learning Jiu Jitsu Volume 1 and 2 and 3 and all my masterclasses. We've got great responses on there. You can check out all the testimonials on there, real testimonials. And join me on the journey of making jiu-jitsu easier and funner. All right, guys, take care.